Hello, biology. Purpose of this video is to give students who are absent an opportunity to get the notes done, or maybe you were writing by hand and I was going too fast, whatever the case may be. This is the notes on section 17-1, where we start talking about the fossil record and how that supports the idea that organisms change over time or evolve over time. We are restarting our numbering with a new chapter. So please do your notes in Cornell note style, and please number them beginning with number 1. All right, so a paleontologist, we're going to abbreviate it PT, fossil record. We're going to abbreviate that as capital F, capital R. Paleontologists are scientists who collect and study fossils. It'd be a really cool job being out in nature and digging up fossils and preserving them and getting them to museums. That'd be a cool career. Fossil record is basically all of the information stored in the rock layers about past life. Also, remember, I will be going a little bit faster than I normally do in class because this is a video, and of course, you can pause it whenever you wish. You'll know I'm about ready to move ahead when I point. I'm not ready to move ahead, but that's how you will know. So the fossil record tells us information about the structure of the organisms, what they ate. Sometimes the shapes of the organisms that were consumed are still actually in the stomach when the organism died, what ate them, and what types of environments they live. So it tells us really a lot about the ecology of these organisms. There are certain other types of fossils that were not animal fossils that'll suggest like what type of climate, what types of plants live there, but really does kind of paint the picture of what life for that organism was like back in time. Pretty cool. What else? It tells us evidence about Earth's life history, about how different groups of organisms, including different species, has changed over time. So again, the fossil record is one of the 4 main types of evidence. Remember, the others are embryology, the study of embryos. Now my memory is escaping me. Homologous structures, the fossil record, and geographic distribution of where these species are found or these fossils are found on the planet. All right, you guys, moving ahead. All right, is the fossil record complete? No, there are lots of gaps in lots of different animal and plant groups. For example, the gap in the human fossil record is referred to as the missing link. We have a lot of evidence and a lot of fossil record on recent hominids, and by recent I mean just over the last million years or so. But then there's a big gap, and then we have a lot of evidence on the fossil record of ancient primates. And if we had this fossil that had characteristics of ancient primates and also some characteristics of more recent hominids, which are what we refer to ourselves and our ancestors as, then it might be a little bit easier for people to believe that evolution actually is what's happening on this planet. But again, remember, it doesn't really matter whether or not you believe in evolution or you don't believe in evolution. We got other problems to solve. All right, species extinction. Yeah, and this blows my mind. Over 99% of all the species that have ever lived on this planet are extinct, which hopefully gives you a greater appreciation for the diversity that we still have left, and maybe it'll inspire you to do things in your own life and vote for the right people and to become involved in environmental conservation to preserve the biodiversity that we have left, because we are currently in the midst of another mass extinction. This, although, is the only one that is human caused. All right, so how do paleontologists determine the age of fossils? They use 2 techniques. One's referred to as relative dating, and no, we're not talking about Darwin and Emma dating one another, the cousins. Relative just is non-specific. It's older than or younger than, but it's not specific. It's not exact. And radioactive isn't really exact, but I mean, we can get it usually to within a couple thousand years. Radioactive dating is a more specific way of determining the age of a fossil. All right, moving ahead. Okay, so relative dating information. So it's basically the order of the rock layers. So you know that if you find a fossil in a rock layer that's further down than a fossil that's found in a rock layer that's closer to the surface, the one down here is older. The one down here is younger, and that's because rock layers pile on top of one another. So a lower rock layer will have an older age than a younger rock layer. And of course, if the fossil is found in that rock layer, then we know that fossil is approximately the same age as that rock layer. So fossils here are younger than fossils down here. And if you find a fossil in the middle, it's older than the one up here, but it's younger than the one down here. So that's what relative dating means. Older than, younger than. On an index fossil has some characteristics. So like the index of your book, you look up in the index of the book to find information about that word or that term. Index fossil, characteristics of that, the species needs to be recognizable. You need to know what it is. You need to know that it existed for a short period of time, so it didn't live for hundreds and hundreds of millions of years, because that really kind of extends the possible age of that fossil. You want something a little bit more narrow, and it had to have a wide geographic range, which means it can be found in many different places on the planet. So an index fossil tells you about, it's kind of like a starting point. It tells you that this fossil is here. And if we find other fossils, we can refer to, oh, it's older than this index fossil. If we find a fossil here, this fossil is younger than the index fossil. And then, of course, paleontologists can make certain theories and hypotheses related to that. How are index fossils used? To compare the relative ages of fossils, like I just mentioned, and to estimate a fossil's age. Sorry, it's Sunday morning. Haven't eaten my breakfast. I'm going to munch on an apple a little bit. Moving ahead. So this is the Grand Canyon, which actually I'm going to visit again in early July this year. So these are the rock layers, okay? This fossil is older than this fossil. This fossil is older than this fossil, but it's younger than this fossil. So that's relative dating, is the overall location of these organisms with respect to older and older rock layers. What do we call scientists that study fossils? Take a look back at number 1. Yeah, those are paleontologists. What are the 3 types of information that fossil record provides us? Take a look back at number 2. So it gives us information about the structure, the body styles of these organisms, what ate the organisms, what these organisms ate. Even tells us a little about the environment in which they lived in. 2 methods of dating a rock. Take a look at number 6. Yeah, relative dating and radioactive dating. Of course, radioactive is better, but it does require some technology, and there's some cost involved in that. Relative dating usually leads to figuring out the radioactive age of it, but relative dating can be used just by understanding which rock layers these fossils were found in. A blank blank is a species that is recognizable and had existed for a short period of time, but had a wide geographic range. You might want to take a look back at number 8. Yeah, you bet. That is an index fossil. Nice. Okay, so let's get into radioactive dating. So a lot of elements have a slight radioactivity to them, and that basically means that they degrade or they break down over really long periods of time. Some of the half-lives of like uranium and plutonium, which we use in nuclear energy production, electricity production from nuclear energy, have thousands and thousands of years of half-lives. So basically, we use a ratio knowing the rate that these things break down, and then we can accurately, to within usually about 1,000 years, determine the age of the rock. Because remember, fossils are rocks. I mean, they just are rocks with very unique shapes. All of the living tissues get replaced with mineral tissues, or minerals. Minerals are what make up rocks. How's it done? Some elements are radioactive, and they steadily break down into non-radioactive elements. And of course, if we can learn the rate of decay and figure out how much of the radioactive is left versus the non-radioactive is left and create a ratio, we can predict how long that sample has been decaying and how old it is. Because the moment the organism dies, those elements start to radioactively decay. And a half-life is the length of time required for half of the radioactive atoms to decay. So simply you multiply that by 2, and that is all of the radioactive part of the element changes to the non-radioactive, and then a half-life is something that we use to actually calculate how much is left, how much is gone, and of course knowing the rate, then we can calculate when the decay began. All right, moving ahead. All right, so carbon-14. So carbon-14 is a radioactive isotope. Remember, isotope is an element that has more or fewer neutrons than the elemental atom. Carbon-12 is normal. It's normally got 6 protons, 6 neutrons. Carbon-14 has an extra 2 neutrons. Anyway, it's slightly radioactive. And of course, carbon's important because living things are made out of carbon. So if we can figure out the relative ratio of carbon-14 to carbon-12, and we know the half-life of carbon-14, which we do, then we can predict with pretty good accuracy when that organism died based on the age of the rock or the age of the actual fossil. How they use by comparing the amounts of carbon-14 and carbon-12 in a fossil. Researchers can determine when the organism lived and how old the fossil is with a ratio. All right, moving ahead. Which dating technique is used to find an absolute age of a fossil? You might want to take a look back at number 10. Yeah, so it's radioactive dating. Relative dating, non-absolute. Radioactive dating, absolute. If a rock sample has half carbon-14 and half carbon-12, the rock has reached its blank. Take a look back at number 12. Yeah, that's its half-life. All right, which of the following statements about fossils is not true? Most fossils form in sedimentary rock. Fossils occur in a particular order. Only a small portion of fossils are from extinct organisms. Fossils can be used in relative dating of rock formations. There are a few things up there that we didn't actually talk about in these notes. I have trimmed them a little bit to make sure that you have an opportunity to write or type them in the short period of time that we have together now. What do you guys think? Only one of those things up there is untrue. Remember, most of the fossils that we find are from extinct organisms because over 99% of all the living things that have ever lived on this planet are extinct. So the fossils are going to be from them, right? All right, the fossil record consistently shows evidence that all forms of life have existed in all geologic era. Geologic era is a time period. Living organisms have only been on Earth for a short time. Living things have changed over time. Ancient life forms are much the same as forms found living today. Only one of those things up there is true. Yeah, it supports the idea that living things have changed over time or evolved over time. Index fossils assist paleontologists in dating rocks because they represent species that are widely distributed and existed for a very long time, existed in a single location for a short period of time, were widely distributed and existed for a short time, existed in a single location for a long time. Which one of those is a characteristic of an index fossil? Yeah, they had to have a wide distribution and had to have existed for a short period of time. Determining the age of fossils by comparing its placement with fossils in other layers. Is that carbon-14 dating, fossil indexing, relative dating, or absolute dating? Remember, this is the non-specific one, which means that we can get rid of carbon-14 because that's radioactive dating. Radioactive dating is also referred to as absolute dating, so we can get rid of that one. I have no idea what fossil indexing means. Maybe it's the process of locating an index fossil, but that's not it. Correct answer is relative dating. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is it for the notes. We will see you in class or see you in the Zoom.